Hey, what's going on, guys? Belvin and Kostrowski back together again, June 22nd, ready to talk a little MLB DFS for a big old slate tonight. We got ourselves a 14 gamer. So click that thumbs up button, subscribe to the station if you're new to it, hit the bell for notifications, and let's start talking baseball, my friend.
Let's get it, man. I know I've been feeling under the weather the past day and a half, so happy to be back on here with you.
As you guys can see by the cover, we're going to talk a little Astros as they are set up to be very chalky again today. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Drafters. Promo code DFS 5-pack. We've told you all about them. Get on there, get your money in, start drafting with us, and we will be covering some NBAs that has dropped already. So an opportune time to pick up a weekly membership as we still rattle through a little bit more NBA for the rest of the season. Let's talk about pitching today. So rough night last night in that one. Let's try to turn around the mojo today, and let's talk about a guy named Zach Wheeler, who has just been nothing short of phenomenal over the past couple of months. So this guy's got 34 plus in 5 of his last 8 or 9 starts. For some reason, the number didn't show up. And also, he has been just dominant in Philadelphia this year, which is a home game for him again tonight. We also saw this from Wheeler a couple of years ago. So he's an interesting career, right? When he came up with the Mets, maybe like 6, 7, 8 years ago, he was supposed to be, this is back when Matt Harvey was good. DeGrom was good, but not quite DeGrom yet. And Noah Syndergaard was up there, man. They looked like they had this young, not even count Steven Matz, that they just had the best young starting rotation we have ever seen. And then through injuries and a couple other things, it just never amounted to what it ever was supposed to be, other than Jacob deGrom, who is maybe the best pitcher of all time. Wheeler has had an interesting career, and he had a stretch a couple of years ago where outside of deGrom, who is just on another planet, over the past 2 months, he's as good as anybody in baseball. And Cole appears to be getting more love than him today. I actually like Wheeler to outscore Cole today, as Cole's strikeout numbers have taken a dip. In Kansas City, I believe, has the second lowest K rate in baseball.
Yeah, ton to like about Wheeler here. Both of us have been on him a bunch this year. Nice to see him take that step and be this consistent ace all year, at least so far. Again, going up against Scherzer, expect kind of a pitcher's duel here. We've seen this battle once already this year. I think Wheeler got the better of him that time as well. At home, you mentioned it. Wheeler's been awesome. Again, on a slate with a bunch of good pitching options, Wheeler's our favorite. And it's not that he's a perfect option or in a perfect spot here. It's that everyone is kind of dealing with question marks right now in the landscape of baseball. And with how he's pitching, was really impressed to see him come out of that start against the Dodgers with 25 DK points. And I think we see another performance like that tonight.
Just to say this, he's the second best pitcher in baseball this year. We went through the AL guys. Like, he'd be the best pitcher in the AL this season. And if it wasn't for the fact that Jacob deGrom is literally on another planet compared to everybody else in the world, he's been the second best pitcher in baseball, second best pitcher in the NL this year.
Mm-hmm.
deGrom is just here, and everybody else just wants to be on his level.
Agreed.
All right, next up. So let's talk about today's cover boy, Yordan Alvarez. This is part about Alvarez, but also just part about the Houston Astros. Coming off of a night where they were, chalk. Took a little hit because some people got concerned, rightfully, about the weather. But ultimately, the game played out, and the Astros were good. They got another good spot here again today in a great ballpark in Baltimore, up against a guy in Jorge Lopez, who is, we'll say, mediocre at best, just to be nice to him. This Alvarez kid, he can hit. You guys all know it. He's going to be popular today for all the obvious reasons. He's below 5K. And this is part about Alvarez, but just part in general. If you're playing cash games tonight, you start off by looking at the Astros and just deciding how many of them you want in your roster.
Yeah, another one where you really can't get enough Houston exposure in cash games. Alvarez looks like the guy that you really want, first guy to lock in. Coming off a monster game last night. Jorge Lopez is not good. He's going to be really popular. Fade at your own risk in tournaments.
Amen. The Astros are a tough fade. We don't like, on monster slates like this, when you got 28 teams in play, it's hard to want to lock in chalk in GPPs, but they're in a really good spot. So, maybe you play a couple of them still. Maybe you use some of the cheap guys that are in play. Do what you want to do, but just know they're going to be crazy popular today.
Yep.
All right, next up. So let's try to move away from the big-time chalk. And you mentioned Nolan Arenado early and often today. Elite power against lefties. And as great as Skubal has pitched, he still does give up a lot of power.
He gives up a lot of power. Arenado had been in the midst of a over 19 slump before homering in the first game and doubling in the first game of a doubleheader on Sunday. Hit the ball hard a couple times on Sunday night, right at guys. I love Arenado here. Again, going into an AL park with the DH should lengthen that Cardinals lineup a little bit. He's expensive at 5,800, going to keep his ownership down. We talked about Skubal. Skubal's got really good strikeout stuff, and he's also in play from a pitching perspective. But on the other side, he gives up a lot of home runs. Cardinals, again, adding the DH in a good spot, ton of right-handed power. They haven't been good against left-handed pitching for the past month or so. Kind of expect them to break that trend tonight.
All right, next up. So let's talk about. Oh man, this is a detailed conversation. So there's going to be a few levels to this one, and this is Wander Franco. This is an elite level prospect, one of the more talked about prospects to come up for a while. They moved on from Willy Adames and sent him over to my Brewers because this kid has all the makings of a potential star, and he's been called up. We fully expect him to be in the lineup tonight. I don't know where they're going to bat him. Anywhere 1 through 9 is completely possible. The higher up the order is, the chalkier is. If this guy's like batting in the top 4 or 5, like just assume he has crazy levels of chalk, because this is a name that like there aren't a lot of people who play MLB DFS are DFSers and not necessarily baseball fans. This guy is so well known and well talked about that just DFS players in general already know about him without even necessarily being monster baseball fans, because this is one guys just know about. And the fact that he is 2K, likely making his premiere tonight, like just expect him to be wildly popular against Erod, who has been struggling over the past month and a half. Erod has been getting crushed for the last 6-7 starts. So this guy's going to be very, very, very high owned. He's going to eat up most of the ownership at shortstop tonight. I would assume that in cash games, just crazy owned, but even in GPPs, high ownership. So our case for the GPP fade is simple. It's an ownership fade. Yeah, this guy's going to be all that in a bag of chips, but that doesn't mean he balls in his opening night.
No, but know that, if he does ball, you're starting from way behind the 8 ball, so to speak, because he's crazy cheap. And the fact of the matter is he's just much better than a 2K hitter, right? Like sometimes these prospects are no good and they're not going to be able to hit in the big leagues. That's not Franco. I mean, again, everything we've heard is that he's the best prospect in ages, potentially is, a Tatis level good. And you're fading him like you mentioned tonight because he might be that good, but it might take him a little bit to get going. It might take him one game. I mean, that's all we care about tonight is that he doesn't have a monster game tonight. He might go 2 for 3 with an RBI single and a double, and you're happy with it. But Tim Anderson hits 2 bombs. So, it's the other way to look at it too. There's plenty of good shortstops in play tonight in tournaments, but know that this guy is going to be really chalky. He's much better than a 2K hitter. And as much as I said, Alvarez was a fade at your own risk, Franco fits right in that mold.
Definitely a fade at your own risk. And if he has a monster opening night at 2K at very, very high ownership, you're probably not cashing. Just what it comes down to, because the earlier the Tampa Bay lineup gets brought out, the higher owned he becomes. The higher it is in the batting order, the higher owned he becomes. Like if Tampa Bay drops their lineup 2 hours before a lock and he's batting leadoff at 2K, like what do you think his ownership is? Like 85, 90 in cash games and like 60 in GPPs?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, in cash games, he should be 100% owned. He probably will be, like 90 to 95% owned. In tournaments, the higher stakes you get, the more he'll be owned. So in like the $100 single entry, he'll probably be like 85% owned.
The difference between baseball and basketball is, let's just think about it from this way. If Mike Trout was 2K against we'll say mediocre or less pitcher, I mean, he is huge chalk, but he's not guaranteed to succeed. If Giannis Antetokounmpo was the minimum 3K against any team in basketball, like unless he gets hurt to open the game, he's gonna succeed on that price tag. So it's just the difference in the way the two sports work out, which is why it becomes a better idea to fade him in GPPs, or at least an intriguing idea to fade him in GPPs, because baseball players, no matter how great they are never guaranteed to have a good night.
Amen.
So, all right, moving on down the list, we're going to talk about your favorite player, Gary Sanchez, who is just on fire right now.
Yeah, I talk about him a lot. I'm a huge Sanchez guy. I've seem to be a big Yankees fan at this point, and I don't know why. But, yeah, it just happens to be like that, I guess, because of DFS. Been on them a bunch. They haven't been great all year, obviously, but coming off a really big series win against Oakland where they came from behind the last two games. I told you that Manaea was dominant on Sunday, struck out 11, his career high. The only guy to get to him was Sanchez, chased him from the game with an RBI double, hit a double earlier in the game. He's just locked in right now. We've seen this from him in the past. Very hot and cold. When he's cold, he's real cold. When he's hot, he's red hot, and he's that right now.
One of the things that is different, again, to go talk about like baseball versus basketball, like if like I talked about Giannis this morning. If Giannis was 13K against Atlanta, I wouldn't be that interested because it's just hard to succeed on that price tag. There's only so many minutes in a ball game. But something that you do often is you overspend on guys because that means that they are just going to be low owned. Well, in baseball, like let's just say that Gary Sanchez was 7K tonight. Like it would be hard to pay for him because it would ruin the rest of your lineup. But he can still easily succeed on 7K. Like a basketball player really almost rarely succeeds on 13 or 14K.
Baseball is all about the ends of the spectrum, right? Like the big game. So where like if Gary Sanchez pays off his $5,300 salary, he'd probably pay off an 8K salary. You know what I mean? Because he's hitting at least one home run. That said, if he doesn't pay off his $5,300 salary, he probably wouldn't pay off a 3K salary because he has a really bad game. You know what I mean? It's just interesting like that.
Yeah, it's different because the highs and the lows are so much different. Especially for like your look at your stud players and stuff like that. Like again, you can put Mike Trout, best player in baseball still for my money, even though I'll take all the Tatis and Acuna arguments. It's just hard to remember Mike Trout because he hasn't played in a few minutes. But you put Mike Trout or Acuna or Tatis, whoever, out there, you give him a cheap price tag against a bad pitcher, they're still only going to succeed maybe half the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if they succeed half the time, they're amazing.
Yeah, and if you put Giannis Antetokounmpo or LeBron or Davis or Westbrook or whoever you want to think of from the NBA out there at a really cheap price tag, like let's just say you put Russell Westbrook out there at 8,500 against the Detroit Pistons. He's going to succeed 90% of the time, minus like blowouts and injuries.
For sure.
So, I don't know. Fun conversation to have. We've had it before. We'll have it again. That's baseball for today. Good luck, everybody, and we'll talk to you about some sports battle a little bit.
Thanks, guys.